Whenever we upload a video about the history of Palestine, someone always comments, "Go back 3,000 years, the Jews were there first." But that's not history, that's the oldest political trick in the book. Because this isn't about religion or the Bible, it's about how a spiritual story was turned into a weapon of power. If ancient scripture gives ownership, then Italy should reclaim the Roman Empire, and Mongolia should own half the planet. So why does this myth still dominate global politics? And what if I told you even Judaism itself rejects it? Let's break it down. The Bible is not a land deed. It's a spiritual record, not an international title. And even in that record, ancient Israelites didn't own the land continuously. They were conquered again and again by Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, and Romans. They lost power, rebuilt, lost it again. And in 135 CE, after a Jewish revolt, the Romans destroyed Jerusalem, exiled much of the population, and renamed the land Palestina. But here's the crucial part. In Jewish theology itself, this exile wasn't random. It was seen as divine punishment, a consequence for disobedience. God, according to Jewish scripture, scattered them among the nations and forbade them from reestablishing sovereignty by force until the coming of the Messiah. In other words, Judaism teaches humility and patience in exile. Zionism preaches rebellion and conquest. The two couldn't be more opposite. For nearly 2,000 years, Jews lived across the world, peacefully coexisting in places like Morocco, Iraq, Yemen, Poland, and Spain. Then came the late 1800s, Europe's age of nationalism and colonial expansion. Out of that era rose Theodor Herzl, an Austrian journalist, not a rabbi or prophet. He founded political Zionism, a European nationalist movement, not a religious revival. Herzl's idea was to turn a faith story into a territorial project, to build a Jewish state, not wait for a divine one. And here's the twist. The early rabbis of Europe opposed him fiercely. They said Zionism defied God's will, that it was man trying to play God by ending exile through violence. But Herzl wasn't looking for theology, he was looking for land. And when the British Empire offered Palestine, Zionism found its battlefield. By 1917, Britain issued the Balfour Declaration, promising a Jewish homeland in Palestine, a land Britain didn't even own. Zionism had found its colonial sponsor, and by 1948, that homeland became a state built on displacement. Over 700,000 Palestinians were expelled, entire villages wiped from the map, and ancient myths were repackaged as biblical rights. But here's the problem. You can't rewrite 1,300 years of continuous Arab and Palestinian presence with a verse from an ancient book. And you can't justify modern war crimes with scriptures that were never meant to be political weapons. Here's what many won't tell you. Countless Jewish scholars and religious leaders, even today, reject Zionism as anti-Jewish at its core. Groups like Neturei Garda, Orthodox rabbis across New York, Jerusalem, and London all say the same thing. God sent us into exile. We have no right to build a state until He restores it Himself. That means Zionism doesn't just betray Palestinians, it betrays the very faith it claims to defend. Zionism turned a covenant with God into a contract with empire. It replaced prophecy with politics and spirituality with settlers. Let's get back to reality. In the modern world, land is defined by law, history, and continuity, not mythology. Palestine existed for centuries, under its own administrations, governors, and communities, long before 1948. The people there didn't arrive. They were born there, generation after generation, while others left, came back, and left again. And here's where the myth completely collapses. When Theodor Herzl began pushing for a Jewish state, he wasn't thinking about divine promises, he was looking for territory. In fact, in 1903, the British Empire offered him Uganda as a possible Jewish homeland. Uganda, not Jerusalem. And Herzl considered it. That single fact destroys the illusion that Zionism was ever about religion. It wasn't about returning to Holy Land, it was about building a European colony anywhere it could gain power. The myth says return. The truth says displacement. History is not scripture, it's evidence. And the evidence is clear. The land of Palestine belonged, and still belongs, to the people who never left it. No ancient verse can erase 1,300 years of continuous life. No myth can justify modern occupation. Because if exile was once seen as divine punishment, then turning it into a military empire isn't redemption. It's rebellion against God himself. They say go back 3,000 years, but maybe it's time we go back to truth. Not to rewrite it, but to finally remember it.